All right, so today we're starting our first programming language, right? So you guys did the HTML, the CSS, which is great because you need those, but those are not programming languages. Those are styling and markup languages. So today we're starting JavaScript. So JavaScript, what is JavaScript basically? JavaScript is a script language, meaning you write it's a programming language. So you code, you give it instructions, and then the browser or the computer does something with that. So so let's say let's just read here what it is. So JavaScript is the third instead of major building blocks of web pages. So it means HTML and CSS are the building blocks of web pages, and then JavaScript is the third. Without it, we wouldn't be having a dynamic content usability we expect from modern websites. For example, like Facebook, if you ever use Facebook, when you comment, when you like a comment, when you do anything, that's all JavaScript. So all that interactivity makes everything look nicer and smoother. JavaScript is programming that language that was created in 1994, a way to add functionality and interactivity to a website. It's what makes a programming, it's what makes a web pages run. JavaScript was originally designed to be used purely on the front end, but these days JavaScript is actually used on the back end too, and we will learn that at the end of this course. So we'll use something called Node, which is also built with JavaScript. So you could read this whole thing, but mainly JavaScript works in the browser. So this is the browser, this is the Chrome. And if you click inspect, you'll see that there's a tab called console, right? And my website actually has a lot of errors, as you can see. These errors come from, the website, this student portal that we created. And I don't know where these are coming from, actually, to be honest. I have to figure it out, but we could clear it. But this is called a console. So when I ask you to console log something, I mean show your code here. So you could actually run JavaScript here. JavaScript is just programming language, so you could do all the things that programming languages do. You could add two numbers. You could just say 5 plus 10, and it will give you the result. So it does math. So it does all, even like advanced math, you could do with the programming language. You could create, you could give like a variable, and we'll learn this in a minute. But you could say name is equal to Abdi, and then you can call that name. You could just say name, and then it will tell you it's Abdi. So it remembers that name basically that you put in this variable. So that's what we mean by JavaScript works with the browser. So how does JavaScript work with HTML? So that's the main question, right? So how does it work with a HTML and CSS? Remember how we put in CSS in HTML, and I'll show you an example. Let's actually open our editor. I already opened a project for us, but it doesn't have anything. So let's create a index.html here. We don't even need the CSS for now. And then let's create another file called script.js. So JS means JavaScript. So that's the extension, file extension for JavaScript. Okay. So yeah. So let's go back here. HTML. We can just set up our basic HTML. You guys know that how to do this. So we have HTML. It gives us a head. I'm using the GitHub Copilot to fill out this. So we have the basic layout, right? Let's open that. Basic layout. We have a web page here. We move it to the side. Let's make this one smaller. That's only if it fits in the page. Okay, so we have these two, right? Now, how do we add JavaScript to this HTML, right? How do we do that? Who can remind me You guys watch the videos, right? How do we add a JavaScript in this HTML? How do we connect this script file to this HTML? You guys remember? So we need, can you guys hear me? Sorry, I might not have connection.
We can hear you.
Okay, you can hear. Okay, good. So just as you've seen in the videos, and that's one of the reasons why I gave you guys the videos, is because it helps you kind of like remember things when we're doing the lecture here. So it's important to go through those videos when I send something before the lecture, and also going through the course here whenever you have time, kind of like reading through. Some people like reading, so just kind of like, okay, let me read what this is. It might not make sense to you, but when we go over the lecture, it makes a little more sense. So make sure if I send anything before the lecture, it's essential that inshallah to try out, and just, you don't have to understand all of it. You just have to just watch it, inshallah. Okay. So how do we connect it? So I see the comment, the chat, we use a script, right? So right before the body tag right here, we put a script. Who can tell me why do we need to put it here and not in the head? What is the reason behind that? So when you load a page, like when we go to any website, the website loads from the top to bottom, right? So it loads all the HTML, and then it loads the head, which is the CSS, and then it loads the body. If you load the CSS at the bottom, then the website is going to look funny and not good until the CSS loads, right? But the reason why we have to load JavaScript at the bottom of the page is JavaScript is if you load it at the top and the JavaScript file has an error, it will stop the whole website. So the website will not even show whatsoever. So that's why it's essential to put it at the bottom. Sometimes you could put it at the top, but the good way of like building websites is to put your JavaScript at the bottom. So we use the script tag, and then this is where we put our JavaScript file. So we're gonna say here, we're gonna use the source attribute, and then we're just gonna tell where that file is, right? You could also add the tag, let's add, I think you could say rel, no, not rel. What was it? Let me see. Let's go back here. So this is why we have like these comments, or this. So you say, okay, you say type, and then you give it a text slash JavaScript. You basically telling the browser like this is a JavaScript file, right? So we say here type. It's not necessary, but it's good to have this text slash JavaScript. Okay. So this way we're connected now. We connected the JavaScript to the HTML file. How do we know that? How do we know that? You could test by writing something in here. So let's write something like alert, and then type I welcome, or something like that. So now if we load this page or refresh it, it should run right there. See, it gives us alert, and that's how you know it's connected. Another way of knowing is, instead of alert, you could say console log. Where do we find that? Where do we find this console log? The message in the browser. Who can tell me that? Where do we view this console log? We go to inspect, right? I want you guys to participate in the class if you can. I know everybody's busy, but inshallah, it will make a lot faster, and for you to remember what we went through. It would be easier for you to kind of like participate, and then that way, inshallah, you can, yeah. So inspect, yep. So inspect, we went through right like a minute ago. So inspect and then cancel, and that's where you see the message, right? So I want you to remember this console log because we're going to be using this, and in the homework you're going to be using this console log to actually see like the result of your your questions and the things you worked on, right? So that's why we need to remember it. So the console log is right there. Sometimes you see these errors and stuff, you could just forget about them. They're coming from, I think, from the live server thing we're using. Okay, so that's how you connect. So we went through how to connect a, sorry about this, how to connect. I have a lot of pages open. Let's close all this. Okay, we went through how to connect the JavaScript to HTML. So this is how to link your JavaScript to HTML. Any questions about that? Any questions? All right. Another thing would be comments. Comments are simple. You have one line comment, which is a just 2 slashes, and then you have 2-line comments like this. So we can write it like that in the JavaScript. You can write, and comments don't execute, so you will not see anything. So you can write something here. This is 1-line comment. It's always good to comment your code so that you remember what you did if you leave this code and come back after maybe like a month. And then if you want to make a 2-line comment, you could do it like this, and you could just make it like that, and then add here as many comments as you want, or multiple line. I mean, not 2 lines only. Okay, so that's comments. If you want to write your own comment, and then variables. Let's go through. Let's talk about variables. What are variables? So in general, programming languages, all programming languages have something called variables. Variables are just like a container. So let's say you have like a box here, right? This box you could put in clothes, you could put in other things, whatever you want. It's just a box for you to put in whatever you want. So this is the variable, right? You could put in a lot of things. In Java, in programming, variables are usually just you'll have a keyword like var, indicating like what comes after it is a variable, and then you could say name, and then equal to Muhammad, right? So this name is the box, right? The name is the box. You could also create another one, age, var age. Var is the keyword. There's also other keywords that we can learn. So let's try that. Let's get rid of this. So in JavaScript, it has three of keywords. Keywords for variable. Okay, 3 keywords for variables. Number 1 is the var. Okay, so the var is, you could say var name is equal to John or whatever. So this var it's kind of like an old way of doing it. So you wouldn't see var that much now. Since 2015, the JavaScript community, they moved away from var. The reason they moved away from var is because var can be changed. So you could just say you could like, let's console log this for now. Console log. Remember that word, console log? So when we console log, we see it down here. You see right here, okay? John, right? And the good thing about the console log is it actually tells you the line. See here, it says the file script line 7, which is right here, line 7. So later when you have issues or errors, it will tell you this, it will tell you the file name, and it will tell you the line number where that happened. So John, okay. So the thing about var is you could just change it. You could just say var name equal to Jane or whatever. And then if you console log it again, it will just say, oh, John Jane. Now you have a name that has two different names in it, which in programming is not good. You do not want to have two things that are the same, but have two different meanings. It will confuse the computer. So we moved away from var and we moved to two other one. We moved to let. So instead of saying var, you say let. So you could say let name equal to John. Now the thing about let is you cannot declare it again. So you cannot say, so it works the same as var, but if you say let name again, it will give you an error. It will say, hey, name has been already declared, right? It will tell you that. So if you have a big program or like a project you're working on and you declared let 2 times with the same variable name, it will refuse that. So that's a good thing about let. It just stops you from doing that. But what you could also do is with let, you could just say you could declare the name like that. You could declare the variable, but you could define it later. You could just say just like that, right? So you could just say, okay, let's create the variable first, and then let's give it a value next, right? So that's the difference. And then there's the constant. Let's just say 3. There is const. Const is another one which is more strict than let. Let is strict, but const is way more strict. It wouldn't even let you do anything with the variable. You cannot change this variable. You cannot add anything to it. Once you create it, you created it. So now, if we say something like name, if we say constant name, of course, it will not let you declare again. You cannot say name equal to something else. This will give you an error right here, right? But what you cannot also do is you cannot change the value. So once you declare here and you give it a value, must be initialized. So it will not allow you to do that. As you can see here, it asks you first, you have to give it a some value. Okay, so those are the 3 different. So I would say always use const unless you need to use let. So always use const. Const will make sure that you don't get errors. And if you get an error, you'll get it right away and you don't have to worry about it later, right? It will not mess up your program. Okay, so that's variables. That's how they work in general. Any questions about variables? And we're going over this quicker because we want to get to the bigger projects, bigger concepts like functions. And if you watch the videos I sent, it will be easy for you to remember to know these. So you could review if you want, if I'm going too fast. All right. So let's go to the data types. What are data types? So, and this is like a general concept. So variables, these are all basics for all programming languages, right? So data types are also a concept that are similar to all programming languages. The way data types work is each programming language has a different ways of storing data. So let's say you have numbers, right? If you have numbers, sorry about I'm using my mouse instead of stylus. Numbers, you have numbers, you have strings. Strings are just text, right? So in computers don't understand what you write. You have to be very specific. You have to tell the computer, this is a number. This is a text. You have to declare that. There's also something called Boolean, which is a true or false. So true or false. It's called Boolean. So these are some basic basic kind of like data types. There's also advanced data types. In JavaScript, we have a primitive. We have primitive data types such as strings, numbers, booleans, and there's undefined and null. And then there is advanced, or let me see, where do we explain? so we have primitive, and then we have non-primitive. Basic and non-primitive are functions, and then we also have objects, we also have arrays, and we'll touch on those later. So these primitive, we call them primitive because they don't have anything to them. So when strings are basically just a variable, and then you declare a string. So a string is always has a quotation around it. So you could have a string is either you could say const, just what we wrote right now, const name equal to Jane, let's say. So strings always have quotation around them, either single quotation like that, or double quotation. So it's fine either way. And then numbers are, you could say const age is equal to 30. Numbers don't have any quotation around them, right? So if you have a number, make sure no quotation. And then booleans is const the oldest true. So the oldest, so let's say this is Jane is the oldest child. And when you write in a variable and there's two words or multiple words in it, you use something called camel case, which is the first word is lowercase, and then after that you capitalize the first letter of each one. So let's say we want to write a longer one. We want to say something like the best city in the world, right? That's how you write. And you could just say here whatever, Makkah, right? So that's how you write. This is called camel case, and there's also a snake case. A snake case is like this: const the best city in the world. So this is a snake case, looks like a snake, and this is camel case. The reason for camel case is because it has like a humps, right? So it's called camel case. That's why. Okay, so if you see that, if you ever heard camel case, all that, that's how you write. So, and also variables don't start from they don't start from numbers, so you can't start a number like that. It won't work. You could only start from underscore or a letter. That's pretty much it. That's only a two that you could start with. Okay, so strings are just a text, so it could be any text, and then also a number could be a string too. How can a number be a string? Who can tell me that? Can a number be a string, and how? Or should I say, can you make a number a string?
You can. You have to put that little what is that called?
The quotation.
Quotation. Yeah.
Yep, quotation around it. So let's say age is equal to 30. Instead of like that, in JavaScript, you could just say like that. And then JavaScript will not consider this as a number. So you cannot use this to add something or anything like that. And there's also a way to know, but it's a little more advanced. But if you see a quotation around a number, it means JavaScript doesn't consider this as a number. It considers it as a string. Okay, so that's that. And the numbers could be any minus numbers, positive numbers. There's also the decimal numbers. It could be any type of number. So it, anywhere between these two, plus minus. Booleans are true or false. You know that one. Undefined. This one it's not necessary to know, but if you ever see undefined or null, they're also a data type too. Any questions about data types? There's also other data types. We talked about primitive, but let me just touch on non-primitive ones. Non-primitive ones could be something like list, shopping list. It could be this. Who can tell me what this is? If you ever heard about it, what is it called? So this is called an array. Okay, so if you see this straight bracket or square bracket, it means an array. So we will learn that at the end. So this is an array. and then there's also a const. There's also this curly bracket, which is called object. So this is an array, and this is an object. Okay, object is a curly bracket like that, like this, but you have a you have like that. So you have this curly bracket, and then you have a this is called the key pair value. So you have something, a name, and then you give it a value, and then you have age, you give it a value, and they're all enclosed in this here, and they all have this one name underneath them. And we will learn this at the end. So this will be our last for today. Okay, so those are data types. Any questions about data types? Data types are basically different ways of storing data. That's all it is. All right, sounds good. Okay, let's cover on comparisons. Comparisons are the word says comparisons. So you basically comparing different things. So let's say we want to compare two things in JavaScript. Let's comment out this. So let's say we want to compare two numbers. You could just say 10 equal to 2. Is that false or true? Whatever. So how do you define that? Okay. So in JavaScript, there are four ways to compare things. There's maybe 5. So there is greater than. It's just like in high school or in college, how you learn in math. You have greater than, you have less than, you have greater than or equal, and you have less than or equal. This is as close as you're gonna get into math in the programming in JavaScript. JavaScript has its own math, but we're not gonna learn. You could explore that yourself. And then so these are the 4, and then there's another one. There's actually 2 more right here. You have equal. So this one is equal, and then you have not equal. Okay, and I'll show you an example of those. Okay, so let's do that. Let's create a variable. Let's call it age 1 30. Let's create age 2. Okay, and then let's say let's see if they are equal. If these are equal, I mean, you can see them, they're equal, but let's say you have like 20, right? So if we say console log, and we say age 1 is less than age 2, what do you think is gonna come? What is it gonna console log? What kind of message? So it's gonna console log either true or false, because it's just a true or false statement. Is it equal? Is age 1 greater than or less than age 2? So it says false because age 1 is more. And then if you flip the other way, of course, it's gonna console log the opposite, which is true. If you say equal to, so let's make it so that they're equal. If they're equal, then what did we do here? Console log. What is the console log in that? Okay. Okay, let's say equal. Yeah, I mean that way. So if you want to write greater than or equal, you have to write it like this. So in this statement, actually, it's true and false at the same time. Because it's not greater, it's only equal. So what it does is it only picks the one that is true, and then it says, okay, this is true. So if one of the statements is true, then it picks only the true one. Same as the other way around. So you get the point, basically. You comparing different things. So that's easy to understand. But then there's in JavaScript, there is an equal like this. So in JavaScript, you have the usual equal, which is like this, right? You have equal means it should be true, right? So it's true. But you have a third equal. You have like equal with the 3 equals like this. It's true. Who can tell me what does this mean? What does 3 equals mean? Why do we need 3 equals? Who remembers from reading anywhere? So this is a thing for JavaScript. So if you have 3 equals, so 3 equals mean 3 equals, they mean you're comparing value and type, right? You're comparing value and type. What does that even mean? Okay, let me give you an example of why this is important. So always use this, always use the 3 equals. But let's say we use 2 equals and it says true, which is true here. But let's make this 30 a string. It still says true. Why? That's really confusing because this is a number and this is a string. The reason for that is JavaScript, when they were creating JavaScript, they were like, oh, okay, so this equal checks only the values, right? It only checks the value. But if we make 3 of them, it's going to check the value, which is 30 now, and the type. This one is type is number, this one type is a string. So it's going to check both. So if we say equal, it's going to say false now. And this is very tricky subject in JavaScript, and you have to keep in mind always, if always use the 3 equals so that you have an accurate comparison of 2 things. That's the only thing. Any question about that, about this equal in JavaScript? So if you want to compare, if you really want to compare 2 things, you use 3. If you don't care, you use 2. Right? So in exam or anywhere, or in the interview, actually, when you're looking for a job, they will ask you, why do we use 3 equals in JavaScript? So you need to say 3 equals means JavaScript is comparing the value and the type. If you say that, then you're off the hook. If you don't say that, then they will, you know, they might cut a point. Okay. So that is comparison. Any questions about comparison? One more thing about comparison we didn't add is if you say, if we do that, what does that mean? Who can tell me? What does this exclamation mark mean? Anyone?
Not.
Not. So this exclamation mark means not. So you're just doing the opposite of equal. You're saying age 1 is not equal to age 2, which is true. Because right now we have a string here, but if you just say 1 equal, it will say false. So let's actually go back to the 3 equals. So it means not. So if you say, and you put it in front of the equals. So it only works with equals, and also it works with other things too. And you will learn that in the future. But the not equal sign is really important. So sometimes you want to use it in programming. And also there are actual there are memes about the not, right? So something like somebody would say something like I love you, and then they will add a not in front of it like this. So there's some memes about that. So the person will think, oh, you love me, and then in programming actually means not really. Okay, so let's save time and just keep going. Logical operators are really important. There's 2 logical operators. Yeah, there's only 2 of them. Okay, so the 2 of them, what is a logical operator to start with? Logical operator is things like and or. So so if you say something like let's delete this, let's start a new one. So if you say something like, I slept last night and I took a shower this morning, right? That's just a normal statement, right? So if you say that, that means you did both of them. These are true. This is true, true, true. So everything, this whole statement is true now, right? So if you did these two, it means this is true, true statement. But if you say I slept, right? Sorry about the drawing, or I took a shower. Okay. Can this statement, all of it, be true? In like normal English, not even programming. Can this whole statement be true? How can it be true logically? Can it be true? The whole thing. I slept last night, or I took a shower. One of them has to be true, right? You can't be sleeping and taking it. It's not and, it's or. So in this logical, it means this whole statement could be false, right? This also could be false because only one of them is true and the other one is false, right? It also could be true because you took a shower or you slept, so you could be, so one of them is true, one of them has to be true. So either this one has to be true or this one has to be true. They cannot both be true at the same time because it's or. Or is exclusive. It means it you have to choose one statement. And it's inclusive. It means you both they have to be true, right? So this is and, this is or. In programming, mostly you write or like this. This is in the keyboard. It's a shift and number 7 2 times, and this one is a 2 pipes. They're called pipes. It's a shift and the key above the enter. So that's how you do it. So let's see in programming. So let's do a, what happened to my computer? Can you guys hear me? I think my, okay, yeah, couldn't find my editor. Okay, let's console log all this. Okay, so I mean, comment out. If we console log, just like this example, let's copy this whole example. This example, we're saying 100 is less than 10. And what is this one? Who can tell me? Is that or on? What is that? What is that? What is this? Or, okay. So yeah, so or. So right here you have right in a note. Or is written like this, and is written like this. Okay. So we're saying 100 is greater than 10, or 10 is equal to 10. Is this true statement or false statement? So one of them has to be true, and that's all you need. When you have or, you just need one of them to be true, and then the whole statement is true after that. As you can see here, 100 is greater than 10, right? And this one is same, is equal. So these both are true. So that's good. But if we have something like 9 here, right? And we console log that. Let's go here. Okay, we console log that. Let's save it. So it's true because the first statement is true. Then it stops. It says, okay, yeah, the first statement is true and we're good to go. What if we say this is less than 10, 100 is less than 10, then it becomes false. It doesn't matter if this is true. Oh, actually, it becomes true. Okay, I think this is something to do with JavaScript. But if you have one statement true, then the whole statement becomes true, right? But if you have here an is different. An and means both of them, they have to be true. In if you have or, it means one of them has to be true, and then the whole statement becomes true, right? The order doesn't matter. Okay, so and means it doesn't matter if this is true, right? But it says false because this one is not true. So both of them, they have to be true. They have to be true statements for the and to make sense. So otherwise you will have false. So keep that in mind. And if this is true, then you have, both statements are true. Does that make sense to you guys? Or it means only one of the statement has to be true, and means both statements have to be true. So it's basically just like in English, like in normal language. If you say something like he took the bus or he walked, then one of them has to be true. You can't take the bus and walk at the same time. We could do that in the bus, but walk to home or something like that, right? But if you have an, then both of them, they have to be true. You have to have he took the bus and he ate lunch, right? Then that means he was eating lunch while he was taking the bus, right? Or he did it, right after each other. So and means both the statements, or means one of the statements has to be true. Any questions about that? Okay. All right, let's continue. So we have the control flow. So let's see what we have left. So we did this. We're gonna do the loops and the control flow, and then we're gonna take a break, and then finish up functions and arrays and objects. The functions are the most important for today's lesson, but also arrays and objects are also important. They're all important. Control flow is important. Loops are important, but functions are the ones you can use the most, and we'll see that later. So let's do the control flow, which is control flow is basically an if statement. So in programming, the good thing about programming is that you could do logical conditioning, basically. So in here it says, often as a programmer, as a computer is reading and executing our code, we want our code to run only if something is true or not. For example, add 1 point to a variable score if the character touches a coin. This is known as a control flow or conditional logic. Control flow means that not all code on the screen is executed in order or at all, right? So yeah, you heard about this. It's basically just if statement. If this happens, do that. If this happens, do that, right? So let's do a basic example of that, right? So let's do here a simple example, and we're just gonna follow this example. We're gonna have an age. So we're gonna create a variable called age is equal to 30. Let's say 20, and then, or 21 is fine. And then we're gonna check if the person is old enough to drive a car, right? Let's just do that. I think it's this one, yeah. Let's check if they're old enough to drive a car. So let's say they're like 17, right? And let's say 18 is the age you need to be to drive a car. And we're gonna say if age is equal to or greater than 18, it says you can vote, but you can drive a car. You can drive, right? So this statement is basically saying if the age, this variable, if it's greater than or equal to 18, then you can drive. What do you think it's going to print? Who can guess? What do you think it's going to print out or console log? Is this statement true? The first thing you need to start with is, if this is true, then this is gonna run, right? So in your words, do you guys think this is a true statement from just looking at this? Is 18 greater than or equal to 17? No, right? So 18 is greater, but it's not equal to 18. I mean, 17. I mean, 17 is less than 18. So this statement should be false, and we shouldn't have anything printed out in here, right? We shouldn't have anything. We have nothing printed out, but we want something to print out. We want to say, okay, but if that's not the case, then we want to say you can't drive, right? Then we're going to use else statement. Else you can't drive, right? And then right here it says you can't drive. So this is conditional programming or conditional statement. If a statement, you're basically saying, okay, check if this, if this variable is equal to this or greater, and then you could do that. Another thing you could do is you could we could say something like we want the person to drive if they have a permit or something like that. And then let's say the age of permit is like 15. You could take a permit 15, you could drive. So let's say here, let's say this one, age without permit, right? So you could, this is the age you can drive without the permit. Let's do that. And then let's create another variable, age with a permit. You need to have just if you have a permit, then 15 to, let's say, 17. If you have to have a permit. You could have a permit, but after 17 you don't need a permit. You could just drive yourself, or you could just say drive with someone or something like that, whatever the concept. But in here you could actually check if the person you could have another condition. So this one is over 18, and this we could check here if we could say else if their age is equal to 15 or equal or greater than 15, then you could drive with a permit. We could say that, right? So it's going to check if the age is equal to 15 or greater. We could say something like 16, and that will still work. Age permit, okay, is greater than yeah. So this one, I mean, here, let's say less or equal to, let's say equal to 16. So this will not print anything, but if we make here 16, then it says you can drive with a permit. So the idea is you could use else if, and you could use as many else if as you want. You could say else if, and then you could have another condition here. The only thing is the last one has to be else, right? The last one has to be else, and the else you cannot add anything to it. You cannot add a condition here, and it will not work. It will give you an error, and it will say you can't do that. If you want to add condition, you have to have else if. So you're basically saying, like, if this is true, console log this, or do this code, else if do this, else if do this, else if. You could just keep going else if as many as you want, right? There's also another way of doing it, which is called a switch, but you don't need to know it right now. Does that make sense? So this is a conditional flow. You're basically telling the program to do something if it's true, else if do something else, and then just keep going back and forth like that. And if all these fail, if these two conditions fail, then the last resort or the default would be the else. Any question about that? Okay, so that's it. That's the conditional flow. Read more about it, watch more. If you don't understand it, it's just an if statement. It's in normal language too. Like in English, you could say, if you give me $5, I will give you food or something like that. And that statement has to be true. The person has to give you $5. If they don't give you $5, then you tell them you can go and bake food or something. Okay, the last one before the break would be the loops. What is a loop? Okay. Loop is, these are fundamentals. I'm keep repeating, these are fundamentals, but they're in all programming languages. Loops, condition statements, variables, all these are in every programming language. So loops are basically if you want to repeat something. So let's say you want to repeat the same statement again and again. Sometimes what happens is back in the day when when you were young, maybe like in Somalia or something, let's say you did something bad, and then your teacher is like, it's gonna punish you to write something on the board, something like, I'll be nice, I'll be nice next time, or I'm sorry I did this. So I'm sorry, let's say you're writing I'm sorry, and then the teacher told you to write 50 times, right? I'm sorry, keep writing that, which is a terrible way to to punish someone. So you keep repeating that. So in programming, you could do that with like one line, right? You could do that with one line by using a loop, right? Think of loop as also in sports. When you're doing, like when you're watching a track, let's say there's a track here. We have a track. People start their track here, and then you could run the track. So the track is right here. It has lines and everything, but it starts right here. So this is the start. Then this is the end. So let's use different color for the running. So let's say you start running, right? Start running and keep repeating that until you're done, right? When you're done, you exit here. This is your exit right here. And this is the entrance. This is where you enter. Okay. So in programming, this is called the loop. So going back and forth, running the loop. Okay. So how do you write that in JavaScript to start with, right? So in JavaScript, it's there's a different ways of writing. We will learn a advanced way later on, but we're gonna learn the basic fundamental one for almost all programming languages. So it starts with the variable or I mean the keyword for. Okay, so let's comment this out. It starts with for, and then you give it a statement here. So the for will have something in it. So the for basically saying start a loop. That's basically what you're trying to tell the program. And then you tell where to start, right? You have to give it a start place. Remember the track, we said we have to have a start. You give it a start and you say I is equal to 0. So the start is 0. So let's start from 0. And we want to run a 10 laps, let's say. So, and then you say keep running I, which is I is like the laps that you're running. Keep running the laps until you reach 10, right? Until you reach 10. Until you reach 10 right here. And then keep running that 10. So in JavaScript, the way you ask the program to keep running is by iterating. It's called iterating. So if you ever heard iterating through something, this is how you iterate. You say, you take the I and then you say plus plus. Plus plus means keep adding number to it, keep adding 1 to it. That's what it's basically saying. So if you ever see plus plus, it means add 1. It's basically just saying like this, add 1. So it's just like that, but a shorter version would be plus plus, right? And then we could console log I. So this program should print out numbers for us. Okay. Let's see that. Okay, so what it did was in here, the console log, you could see it started with 0 and it kept running until it reached 9. Who can tell me why it didn't print 10? Why it stopped at 9?
Because it started with 0.
It started with 0, okay. So that means it's it doesn't have so this is all total 10 laps, right? It's not 9 laps. It starts with 0 and goes all the way to 9. But we also said here less than 10. So we said do not include. So remember that this statement less is a exclusive. It's excluding the 10 basically, right? But if we say here, if we say less than or equal to 10, then it goes all the way to 10, right? So that's basically what it is. Right now, remember we said the teacher punishing us. We could just say here, I will do better next time, right? And then now it wrote 10 times. Actually, it didn't write here because the browser is smart. It knows that you're repeating the same thing. So it just gave you the number here instead of writing the whole thing again and again. You could write here, we could use another statement here called document.write, which will write it in the browser. It's right here. And it's all connected. So we have to break it somehow, right? So if we break it, each one should be one line. So that's how you write. And you could just change here the 10 to like 200 or something, or 300. It will just write all that for you automatically. So this is what loop is basically. This is all you need to remember about loop, right? I would say write somewhere what this is. So usually I will write a note about it. So let's undo this. Let me just draw quickly. So sorry about that color. Let's get a better color. So for, and then you have let equal to I, because you're creating a variable. So let I equal to 0. And then as you can see here, and then you say, stop here, you say I is less than 10, and then we iterate through it. Then we say I plus plus. I'm writing it here because I want to write some comments about it so you could use this later. So this means this is a start. This is that's a start. This is a this is how long it goes. So we'll say duration. Duration. And this is I plus plus is it's iteration, but you could say something like iterating. So I'm not sure exactly spelling iteration. Iteration. Okay. So that's kind of like the way, and this is the key. So make sure you always have this. This is the key. Okay. So keep in mind that's how you write. So if you're ever confused, write this in a note so that you know how to write. Sometimes you will see that we could have the let outside. So you could just say let equal let I, and then we could just say here like that. We don't have to say the let inside. You could do that too. All right. You declare the let outside, and then you do the whole thing here again. Any questions about loops, for loop? At least. There's also another one, while loop, right here. While loop is the same as for loop. The only difference is it doesn't have all this stuff in one go. So you have while. So you're basically saying while I is true. So you're basically saying while I is true, keep writing something, and then you have to cancel the I. You have to say something like this. It's the same way, but it's a different approach, right? And you will learn this later more. But while is also another way of writing for loop, or loops, conditional loops. Any questions about loops? One last thing I want to conclude about the loop is the infinite loop. Remember we talked about the track that you were running. Yeah, so if you say something like this, if you say something like, which I don't want to write here, but if you make this statement true forever, so it never becomes false, right? So let's say we say something like I is greater than any number. You could just say 2. Or yeah, I is greater than 2. Then that means it just keeps going forever, right? Because all the numbers are greater than I, right? So then you will get into infinite loop, which means your program is gonna crash, which means your computer might crash, which means your browser will close and your whole computer might die. I'm just kidding. There are things that are gonna stop before it does that. The browsers have a way to prevent the forever loop. So, but make sure you don't do that. Otherwise, your computer might freeze. It's not gonna die, but it will freeze. Any questions? All right, sounds good. Let's see how much time we have. We started 1:30. We did 1 hour. Okay, good. So that's what I wanted. I wanted to target that 1 hour to cover that first part, and then the next part we're gonna cover functions. We're gonna cover arrays. We're gonna cover objects, which are essential to everything you guys do from here on, right? So let's do that. Let's take 10-minute break, and then cover that. 10-minute break. All right. See you guys. What happened to this? Right here. Okay, see you guys soon. Alhamdulillah. Suzy, yeah, so my daughter this morning, waxaan kusoo kacay, let me stop the past the recording. Okay, so let's actually start with arrays. I wanted to start with functions, but I want to do the arrays first and then do functions last. I think it will make a little more sense. So let's do the arrays. So what are arrays basically? So remember we did the variables. So variables, you have var or let or const or whatever, and then you have a name equal to a string. So let's say abdi, right? But what if you want to have multiple names, right? So what if you want to have like a group of names, let's say, that you want to collect? How do you store that? Because you can't store them like this. Otherwise, what are you going to call them? You're going to call name 1, name 2, name 3. That would be messy, right? And in program, you don't want something messy. You want something a little more elegant, right? So that's why we have arrays. So arrays are like this. So you just say, you can say var or let names equal to, and then you have this straight bracket or square bracket, and then you could say abdi. The good thing about arrays is you could store even numbers, or you could store true or false or Boolean. But for now, let's say names are just strings. So let's say Hamdi, right? I don't know why my mouse is keep jumping. And then you close it like this, right? You close it with a curly bracket. So that's the main reason for arrays, is to collect multiple things that are kind of like similar. So in here you have flavors, and then you have chocolate chip, sugar, peanut butter, and lemon crisp. So usually you collect things that are similar in one array, right? The good thing about arrays is they have something called index, right? So what does that mean, index? So let's say you have a lot of names here. Each string in here has a number. So they have something called index. And this is by default. So once you create an array, automatically they have index. So who can tell me what the array index, where do they start? Do we say 1, 2? Is that how it goes? Who remembers?
0, right?
Yes. So it's also a meme in the internet. Like if a person is doing programming and they don't know that arrays actually start with 0 index, then it means you're not a real programmer, basically, which is not true, but that's the meme. So it starts with 0. So if you want to call like Abdi, then you say something like names, and then you give it a index of 0. Then it will print out Abdi, right? And let's see that as an like actual real world example. So let's create a variable of food, right? Let's do that. So let's say const food. Yeah, so milk and all that. So that's basically how it's written. If you want to console log, let's console log one of them. So if we console log food 0, which one is going to print out? Which one do you think is going to print out? Which one is the 0 index here in this array? The 0 index, milk, right? So 0 index is milk. And then if we say 1 here, it's X, as you can see here, it's printed here. Another thing is arrays, they have properties. They have properties, they have the length property, right? So what does that mean? What does the length mean? So if you want to know how long the array is, you could just add dot length to it, right? So let's say, let's console log this. Let's say, let's get rid of this one and say dot length. And it will give you how many items are in that array. So maybe you will get something from the database and you don't know how long it is or how many items are in that array. You could just say dot length. And they have a lot of properties like this. Not only this one, but it has hundreds of them. It has dot push if you want to add something to it, dot pop if you want to remove something from it. So let's say if we want to push, if we want to add something, another item, we could just say food dot, not that. Something's wrong with my keyboard today. Push, and then sugar, right? We added sugar now. And if we console log the food, you'll see that it has sugar in it. But in here, it doesn't have sugar. It only has here. Keep in mind that this method push will add it at the end. There's also another method to add in the front. There's a whole list of them, and I will give you that list. So we could just say JavaScript array methods. So there's a whole list of array methods that you could use. Let me see if I can find the list. This is a good resource where you could find an example of how to add it, how to remove something from it, all that stuff. So keep that in mind. Let's see, array methods. There's a whole list of them in here. Okay, let's see methods here. Not this type of methods. So array is very complex in JavaScript. But if you know the basics, the basic ones, which are mentioned here, like length, pop, push, unshift, shift, I would say write a description of each one of them. What do they do? And then that will help you a lot. We talked about the index, and then there is also, yeah. So, and also you could change one. So if you want to change one, you could just say something like, let's say right here, assignment. So we want to add the index 0. We want to make it we want to make this. So let's do that. So we say food index 0 is equal to, let's say, something else. Honey, let's say. Right. So now whenever we console log anywhere, it should change that to honey right here. And also in the console log, you can see it gives you, it tells you, it knows this is an array. So it gives the numbers and everything. And then it automatically gives you the length. So this is part of the browser. There's also something called prototype, which we will learn in the future. So each array and or object, they have something called prototype. But arrays are really important. So keep that in mind. They help you a lot when you're building something. We'll also learn advanced methods for array later on. So that will be coming lessons or next lesson, I think. Any question about arrays and what they are? I didn't cover this. I didn't talk about specifically this because you could just read about them and we don't have a lot of time to cover them. Any questions? All right, let's move to objects. What are objects? Objects are similar to arrays. And the funny thing is about JavaScript. JavaScript, everything is objects except the primitive data types that we talked about, like string or number. Other than that, functions are objects, arrays are objects. Everything you see in JavaScript, they're objects. So that's why it's important to learn what objects are. So what are objects? So remember we said in here, if you have, if you want more things, you create an array. Let's say you want to create more than one thing, right? But you also want to have each one of them to have its own name. So in here, in the array, it's great. You know, you could have this, you could have this. And also in the array, you could also have like numbers here. You don't have to have that. You could just say, 2, 3, true or false. You could have all that in here. The important thing is like usually arrays is you use something that are similar. So if you have like here numbers, something related to numbers or ages, then you could write all the numbers in here, right? So, but the thing is, each one of them, we don't know what it is. So you don't know what this 9 stands for. What is it? What is that? You just know that these are all ages. But the thing is, like, it's kind of hard to like combine something that are, totally different. So that's where objects come. So if you want to combine things that are not similar, but are about one thing. So let's say you want to create a, you want to combine all the information about one person. You want to combine their age, their name, where they live, things like that. That's where objects come in, right? So objects is like, it's just like variables. So you just write const and then you say person, and then you could say equal, or you could just write the person's name here, whatever you want to write, and then you have a curly bracket. Now you have to close the curly bracket here. Sorry about the drawing, it's terrible. And then you put in all the information about that person. You could just say name, blah blah, and then you could say age, whatever here. You could say location. So this is how you collect the information about a person. So let's see an example of that. Okay. So let's say const, let's say person, and then name, John, age, location, let's say New York. Okay. And you could write more about the person here. Let's close it. As you can see, like this is all about one person, and you could give the person's name here. You could just say something like Muhammad or whatever, or it's John already. So you could just say John, That's what this whole thing is about, right? Later we will learn something like instantiation, meaning like creating more objects from this object, but that's more advanced. But in general, this is what objects are. Just basically just a combined data about one thing. It doesn't have to be a person. It could be like school, and you could just say something like name. I don't even know why it chose that for me. It's the location is not Mecca. Students, and this would be the number of students, something like 200 or 2000 or whatever. You could just add more to it. So you could write something about anything and then combine it this way. This is called a key pair value. So this is called, when you do this, when you do the name and the value here, it's called key pair value. I think that's how it's written. Key pair value. So this is the key and this is the value. Key pair value. Okay, these are objects. What else do we need to cover about object? So the key value pair, or key value pair. I think that's what's called. Keep in mind you need to have a curly bracket. So how do we access? How do we grab? So if I ask you what is the name of the school, I just need the name of the school. I don't need all the information about the school. How do we grab that? Who remembers how to do that? So there's two ways to do it. One way would be, it's called the dot notation. So in the interview, they will ask you this. This is jargon. I don't like using jargon. So it's called dot notation. This is a programming jargon. This means you just use a dot to access the name or whatever in these properties. So the way you access it is, we could just say console log here. The way to access it is, first you grab the name of the object. So you say here school, and then you say dot and then name. That way right here you see, it says Al-Azhar. That's how you access it. If you want to access anything else, you just say location here and it will grab the location. This is called the dot notation. It's pretty simple. It just means the name of the object, dot, and then whatever you want to grab. Make sure you can only grab the keys, right? You can only grab the keys, not the value. And then there is another way of doing it. Who remembers the other way? Anyone want to take a guess? It's called bracket notation. These are just jargons, but you just need to know a way to access these. Bracket notations basically is using brackets instead of dots. So we say something like school and then we say location like that. That should give us the same thing. What is the difference between these two? Usually you use bracket notation if you have something like, let's say you have location, something like this, our location. If you have two names that are like, sometimes you'll have, so if you have something like this, then it makes sense to use this. But if you don't have it, if it's one word, all of them are one word, then you can use the dot. If one of them is like this, written like that, two words, then it's better to write in bracket notation. That's the only thing. Any question about that? So the interesting thing is you could actually add anything you want within the object. You could add, we could add a array within the object. So you could say something like, let's say, subjects. And then that would be an array. This would be something like Arabic, Quran, right? You could have subjects. And let's say, I don't usually use this bracket thing. I use only the dot most of the time. So if we say here subjects, we'll just print out that array, 2 arrays. How do we select, like maybe like the Quran? How do we select that? Who remembers? We just want to print the Quran here instead of the Arabic and Quran array. Anyone want to take a guess?
If we use the strings or something.
Remember, what do arrays have? Like special properties that they have that nobody else have. Like the how do we know the order, right? What
Yeah,
what
the
is it
order.
called? Yep, the index, right?
Mhm.
So you use the index to access it. What is the index for Quran?
1.
1. Okay. So all we have to do here is by saying 1. That's how you access it. Fateh asked, I think that was okay. What if you want to have, what is that?
I think you answered with the example of subject, because I was wondering if the list is longer, like the name of schools or locations, how you would select.
Okay. So I don't know if I answered that question in the chat. What if you have more than one school location? Oh, okay, yeah, that, yep, the array. So if you have more than one, then you add an array here. You could just say Mecca. Of course, it's not in Mecca, it's in Egypt. Okay, so that's how you do it. And then if you want to access it, first you have to use the dot notation to access one of the elements in the array, and then you use that the index to access the arrays. I mean the object, and this one is the array. But not only array, but you could add other things in objects. You could also add functions in objects, which is confusing, but it works. So let's say we want to create a function that says something like welcome to Al-Azhar, something like that. So we're going to call it something like welcome. And then we're just going to say here function. Don't give it anything else, and we will learn functions in a minute. So don't worry about it. I'm just showing you that you could add multiple things in an object. Within this function, we could just console log and say welcome to Al-Azhar. How do we print this message on here? How do we do that? We want to get rid of this and print it. How do we select that message? Any guess? We haven't learned functions, so I'm just going to give you we're going to start here. So we're going to say first, we're going to select an object like normal. And then we say welcome. And then welcome is a function. It will not print if we just say like this. We will learn why in a minute, but you have to add something like these brackets. And that's how it prints right here. And also, we don't even need this console log because we already did console log here. So if you have 2 console logs, it will give you this undefined thing here. Okay. Any questions about objects and how they work? One more thing before I take your questions, let me show you how to add something to object. How do you add one thing to it? So if you want to add something to an object, we're going to use let's see, where is it? Assigning value. Okay, removing. So before we remove, we want to add one new thing. So you could say so let's say we want to add something outside. So we could say something like, let's add right here, add new, let's add something like let's add the president head object. Okay. So if you want to add, we could say school will bring the object, and then we create a new key here, and then we'll give it the value, right? So now if we print the whole thing, the object, it should show us the with that what we just created, which is the head of school, right? That's how you add it. If you want to remove it, it's simple. You I think you could use the remove right here. You could use the delete button, or I mean delete property. So we could just say here school dot we say delete. So this is a normal property. You can just say delete, and then let's say we want to delete the students. Now, if we print the school, it shouldn't have this students here. So the last one doesn't have students here. The first one has students. So you just use that method delete. There's other ways to delete. This is one way of deleting. Okay. All right. And also you can read more about the properties and stuff like that. We will learn this keyword another time, but it's important too. Any questions? Any questions about objects? I know this is a lot, but arrays and objects are really, really important. Especially objects are even more important than arrays. Any questions? Okay, so let's move on. The last thing we want to cover are functions. Okay, functions. So we want to focus on functions because you guys are going to be using functions everywhere. I want you to understand what functions are. They are essential in programming and also in JavaScript. You're going to be writing functions literally all the time. The whole language is just functions, the whole thing. So it's important to understand how they work, what they are, and what they do. Okay. So let's get an example of. Let me give you an example of what they are. So let's say you want to create like a recipe, like you guys, if you ever cooked, you have to grab a recipe from somewhere, right? Let's say for me, I know how to cook like malawa. I'm really good at malawa. That's a little bit the only thing I can make. If I don't make malawa, then I will starve. I'm just kidding, but I'm really good at it. So I make it like anytime I get a chance. So some of the ingredients are like, let's say eggs. You need to have eggs for malawa. You need to have flour, sugar, right? These are some of the ingredients. You could add other things. Milk is one of the ingredients you could add. You could use water if you want. These are some of the ingredients that you could actually, these are all the ingredients, I think. Other people, they add things to make it smell good and things like that. So these are some of the ingredients. And then you have a recipe. Recipe is like how do you put it together and stuff like that, right? So recipe would be something like how many eggs, how much of flour, things like that. How do you add all this together? So let's say you create the whole thing and you have like a full recipe that like you have the instructions of how to put it together, right? But you want other people to use this recipe with the ingredients and everything. So you just write it down somewhere and people repeat it. So you can repeat it all the time. So functions are like that. Functions, they help you repeat something. So you feed in your ingredients and you feed in the instructions. So let's say you want to write a function that's called make malawa or something like that. So let's say f, and then let's give it a name. So f is the keyword, or we write function in normally, and then you say make malawa is the function, make m, and then you feed it something. You say, okay, so this function takes in eggs, it takes in flour, we're gonna abbreviate it S and then M, right? So these are all the ingredients in text. And then you give it instructions and you give it how to add it all together, and it does something for you. And then this function, it spits out malawa for you. So this function, the good thing about this function is it creates exactly the same malloc every time. It does not mix something to it. It does not make it, smaller or sweeter or less sweeter, anything. Just every time you run this function, it literally makes the exact same malloc every time. Wouldn't that be amazing? Because I know, like, if you're cooking something, we always like just gut something and then like it comes out differently. So that's what functions are. They repeat the same thing for you literally all the time, right? So there's a concept called dry in programming. Dry means do not repeat yourself. So let's say the ingredient we just talked about. You do not want to keep repeating yourself with the same ingredients and same recipe all the time in different places. You want to write one thing that does that thing for you, and it does it really well. So do not repeat yourself in programming. So let's write that. Let's write some functions. Any question about the general understanding what functions are? What the purpose of functions are? Okay. So let's write functions here. Okay, so functions, basic function will be like this. So this is how you write. So the first keyword is function, and then you give the name of the function. You say hello is the name of the function, and then you give it that parenthesis. You always have to have this one. Sometimes it's empty, sometimes it has something, but you always have to have. And then you end it with a curly bracket, and then that curly bracket will have something inside it. So you close it like this, and then you do your stuff here. So let's say we say something like alert, hello world. Okay. So if we go to the browser, it will not run, right? It will not run because this function is just, we wrote the function, we didn't execute it. So you have to execute a function. Execute a function. How do you execute it? You say the name of the function, and then you close it with that, right? And it automatically run here. You see, you close with that. Keep in mind that in JavaScript, this the end semicolon is optional. You don't have to have it. You can have it if you want. But this is a basic function. You write the function, and then you say hello world. Okay. Let's say we want to add a name to it, right? Let's cancel like this instead of alerting hello world. Let's say we want to add something to it. We want to make it a little more complex, right? So we could say here, we could add a name to it here. So we could just say const. We could actually just say here, we don't have to create a variable. We could just say here name. We want to add a name here. And then right here, we just say name. Okay. Or yeah. So we want to write here, give it a little bit of space here. So now what does this mean? So this, when you put something here, this is called parameters, right? It's called parameter. Parameter is whatever you give to the function. So it's just a you're just basically telling the function, okay, whatever I give you here, run it in here. Okay. But how do you define this name? This is just a placeholder. It's not really a name itself. How do you run it? So you add it here. So you say here abdi. So when you executing it, you give it whatever you want it to run here. So as you can see, it says hello abdi here. And we can select it here. So this is called a parameter. I'm gonna write it here. So later when you get asked in the interview, what does it mean when you give something to a function? What is the name of that? It's called parameter. And this is called argument. This one's called argument. This one is called parameter. They work together. So if you have a parameter, you have to have an argument. If you don't have an argument and you have a parameter, you'll have undefined. Sometimes you'll have an error, right? You cannot also have multiple arguments. You cannot do that. You cannot have like something like this and then try to run it. It will give you an error. because it doesn't show here, but it will give you an error. It will say that this argument is not defined, right? So keep in mind. So that's a simple function. Any question? Okay. Let's create a quick function that actually does something. So let's create a function that adds 2 numbers, right? You basically create a function, you give it a name, and then you give it two parameters, and then you tell it to do something. So now all we do now is we're returning. This is a keyword in the function. Once you say return, you cannot add something, you cannot write something underneath it. You have to write it before it. All it's doing is adding 2 numbers. And now we just execute it, and it adds those 2 numbers for us. And you have to give the numbers here. And also the order matters. So the first one is this one, the second one is this one. Okay. Okay, any question about that? Okay. Let's go and do a quick something called function expression. You will not see this all the time, but it is something to know, and it's I'm not sure if it's part of the homework, but it's good to know. So function, it's pretty simple. Function expression. You just give the function a variable. So let's use the add one. You just say const add 2 or add numbers. You could just say that too. Whatever your variable you want to give here, and then you set it to the function. So it's called function expression. And then it does the same thing as the top one right here. The only difference is now the function is within a variable instead of itself. As you can see here, it doesn't have the name here. So you just move the name at the front. Okay. That's called function expression. So if you ever asked function expression, this is what it is. And then the last thing we want to conclude is, which is also important, is arrow function. So it's called arrow function, or sometimes it's called fat arrow function. What does this mean? What does an arrow function or fat arrow function mean? So remember, we're writing here this whole thing. We're writing the function. We're writing the function, and then we're using this keyword function. We're returning something here. We're using this keyword return. We want to get rid of all of that. So after 2015, JavaScript decided to kind of like simplify the function and write it in like a simple version of the function. So instead of writing the function the way we did, now we're going to create a variable. We're not going to use the function keyword. We're just going to say, okay, add these 2 words. And then we're going to use this arrow. That's what's called arrow function or fat arrow function. It's just basically a equal or greater than sign. And then we can do the return here, right? So this is normal, the same as the top one, but you could, return like this. This will do the same thing as the top. But now what you could do is you could get rid of all this. You could get rid of this and get rid of this, and then get rid of the return, and just do that in one line. This whole thing is the same as this one. Where is it? The return one, this one. Okay. So this is called arrow function. It's simplifying the whole thing. It's a little more confusing, but keep in mind that this is the name of the function, and then you say equal to, and then you give it the parameters, and then you say the arrow method, and then after that, instead of return, you could just do this. If it's only 2 things, if it's more than that, and you need like variables and stuff, you still need to have the curly bracket right here. And if you want to add more stuff here, you want to say const number 3 or something like that, 10, and you want to add it here, then you have to do it like this. You have to do it like this. But a lot of times you see it like this because it's more, you could add more here instead of just one line, right? Okay, and then it will do the same thing. So if we execute it, it should do the same thing right here. So this is an arrow function. Any question about that? Any questions? These are the 3 ways to write functions. Is this way, how we wrote it. That's the usual way, normal way to write. Function expression, this is how you write it, with just the function and all that. And then the arrow function, which is this, or the one-liner, which we just did. Any questions? Let's see if we missed anything. Okay, one last thing I want to add is called hoisting. So this is a really interesting concept in JavaScript. What is hoisting? It sounds weird, I know. In English, what is hoisting? Anyone? Any English experts we have here? What does that word mean? Hoisting. What does it mean to hoist something? Anyone? So hoisting, from my understanding, like when you're like riding a horse or something like that, you hoist yourself, right? Like you know, hoisting is just pulling something up. Hoisting. I don't even know the spelling of it. Maybe hoisting, to raise something by means of ropes and pulleys. So like, you know, these you know, in constructions and stuff, when you know, hoist something all the way to the top of the building, that's hoisting. It's a concept in JavaScript, right? It's interesting concept to understand, but it's really important to for writing anything related to programming or to JavaScript. It's only in JavaScript, keep in mind. Hoisting. It's only in JavaScript. It's not in other program languages. What does it mean? It means we can just say console log say hi update. We could just say that we declared we called the function here. We actually executed a function here, but we don't have the function yet. We don't have it anywhere at the top, right? But we could just write the function here right after it, and then it will execute the same way as it did before. It will say hi empty. What does that mean? That means JavaScript hoisted this function at the top. So it moved here, the function. It hoisted the function. So JavaScript engine, which runs in the browser, when it read this code, it said, okay, so basically I'm gonna do it does 2 reading. So the JavaScript engine, it's called V8 engine. If you watch one of the videos I sent you guys, it's called V8 engine. It's not like a car engine. V8 engine is the JavaScript engine. Not that one. V8 JavaScript engine. It's called V8. Basically, it works in the browser, so it executes JavaScript for us. So it reads JavaScript. So the way it reads is once you give it a JavaScript file, it reads from the top to the bottom without doing any execution. It does not execute functions. It doesn't do anything. All it does is, okay, let me see what's in this file. So it does one read, and then it does another read where it executes. The good thing is once it reads here, it says, oh, okay, there is a function that's called say hi, but I don't have that function. But when I read it, there's a function at the bottom called say hi, and it's exact same one as here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, hoist it at the top of this one, and run it like that. So that's what the hoisting is. That's it, right? Even if we put this console log all the way at the top of the file, it will still do the same thing. If we put it all the way here, it will do the same thing and it will execute the same way. That's hoisting. That's the whole concept of hoisting in JavaScript. And it's only in JavaScript. And sometimes it comes up, and also in interviews, they ask you about it because it's a little tricky. So keep that in mind. Any questions? All right. I think that's pretty much it for today. We did it in exactly 2 hours. I want to talk about the homework. Let me quickly check it out. So here's the homework for the next week. Log that out. This is our assignment. Okay. We do the same thing. It's the same method. It's the same way. Go into GitHub. You're not creating an account because you already have one. You click here. It will take you to the project. And I'll do some fixes. So I'll fix some stuff. I'll try to make things a little more clear. But you fork it, you clone it into your computer, and then you have these files. So these files, you have objects, you have functions, basics, arrays. Do the order in basics, and then do the arrays, objects, and then maybe last functions. It doesn't matter, mostly the order. So what are basics? Basics are just what we covered, like variables, things like that. But you guys are going to be doing a actual real world stuff. So you guys are going to be writing functions. You're going to be answering questions and stuff like that. There's a FizzBuzz here. This one I might change a little bit, but there's also a stretch. So this is called a stretch. Stretch is basically extra homework. So if you really want to like, if you want to do more, then you could do the extra homework. So literally the whole thing is the code is going to run here. I already added the JavaScript here for you in this HTML file. So whenever you write a code here in any of these files, it will automatically run. Let me know if it doesn't run for you. But each one has instructions written in it. So go ahead and like, as you can see here, the function, I'm asking you to write the arrow function, the expressions, and stuff like that. And each one of them has a project you guys are going to be doing. So the functions, it has the rock, paper, scissors. You guys are going to be writing a program that's going to do rock, paper, scissors. It sounds very intimidating, but I want you guys to stretch your knowledge and like do your research. Try your best, and you have a whole week. The reason why we have all this is because you guys have a whole week. And remember, I told you guys about the attendance. I want you guys to send me the time you're going to be online, okay? And then inshallah, I'll create. I'll follow up with you. So I want you guys to check in with me every time you guys come in. So each person might have a different time, but each person should have at least 3 hours every day to work on assignment. And that 3 hours, I want you guys to send me those 3 hours that you're available. And then every day when that time comes, I want you to send me a message on Slack and say I'm online or something. Check in with me. And then I know that that's your attendance, right? So that would be the attendance, inshallah. We'll figure out another system in the future, but that would be the easiest way for now. Any questions about the homework and everything? Any questions? Okay, it's definitely not easy, but I want you guys to do your best, inshallah. I'll make some changes here to clear up some stuff. I might remove or add some stuff. So don't clone it yet. I'll just send a message, tell you guys good to go to clone it. So inshallah, I'll do that too. All right, let me pause. We record it. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to do one basic example of how you're going to do it. So I just forked it, and then we're going to clone it. I'm gonna open my terminal. I'm gonna find where to paste this or to put this project. So let's go to pictures, CD into another file, CD into another one. So let's say something like CD into assignments, ls. Okay, so week 3 assignments. Okay, so we can just do it here. It's fine. Git clone. Sorry if you can't see it. It's the Git process basically. Git clone, and then we paste that link there. It does the whole thing for me, and now I can just go ahead and open it. It's this one, W3 week 3 JS introduction. I'm gonna open it with the editor like that. So now I have all the files here. So I can check HTML. So now we could go live on the browser. And I'll just do the same thing I was doing as like the lesson. So I can put it right next to, I can check the first, let me check the console log. Okay, there's something already in the console log, which is interesting, but that's fine. So if you see this little error, this is part of the live server, so it wouldn't show for you if you didn't use that. So let's say, for example, the basics. So it gives you the instructions of each one of them, right? So let's do a different example. So let's say we have a different task here, right? So this task is maybe let's add 2 numbers, right? So it says add, but this is already commented out. Okay, I meant to write it here. Add 2 numbers. Okay. Add two numbers use function. Okay. And I'm just gonna spell it's wrong. I'm just gonna go ahead and write a function that adds 2. So I'm just gonna say function add 2. I'm just gonna give it 2 numbers. So we're just gonna say something like sum1, sum2, and then go ahead and don't use this AI thing. You have to write it yourself. Okay. And then I'm just gonna execute that function right here. So I'm just gonna say, or you could console log it here. Console log the 2 numbers. Now, if I go back to the browser, it should show that message here, 5, right? That's all you do. So you just follow these instructions. I'll try to make them a little more clear, and then you read it, you see if you can understand it, and add it, and then you have FizzBuzz. I'll say for the FizzBuzz, maybe understand what FizzBuzz is first. So Google it. What is FizzBuzz? It's just a little thing in programming that you do. And then you write a code that writes that. You don't have to write that. You don't have to create. You don't have to do anything with the extra credit until you finish with everything. So the first important thing is the lesson. I mean, it's the assignment. Any question? So that's pretty much it. You just write that and you test it and you see if it runs here. If it looks successful, then you move on to the next one. And then you save all this. And then you send it back. So you could go here to the terminal and then do the Git process. But make sure before you even do that, make sure you do your own branch too. So you do Git checkout and stuff. So now as you can see, I modified this, and then I'll add it and do the Git process for that. Any question?
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Okay. Take care, guys. I will see you. I'll see you whenever you guys need help. And make sure to finish it. If you haven't finished the previous ones, try to finish those too. We want to move on, and the more it piles up, the harder it gets. So just every day, maybe do like one of these, or maybe every 2 days do one of these. So all you have to do is the objects, functions, basics, and arrays. It's what we learned. So, and it gives you a practice of how to do them. So inshallah,